Hi. Press the pause button if you need longer to read the following screens and the play button to continue. In IELTS Academic Task 1 Writing, you are asked to write about either graphs, tables or diagrams, maps, flowcharts, etc. This special series will focus on tables and diagrams. We will begin by briefly noting the important features of the table on the right and the task requirements. In the second part, a model task response will be provided. This is the task. It is important to do as the task requires when writing about the table. The table provides information about international higher education students in the UK. You must summarise the information by selecting the main features of the table and make comparisons where relevant. The response must be not less than 150 words. For postgraduate students, non-EU students always outnumbered EU students. With regard to postgraduates, full-time students outnumbered part-time students in both the EU and the non-EU groups, with the exception of postgraduate other. For postgraduate students who were taught, non-EU students considerably outnumbered EU students in both full-time and part-time categories. For students doing a first degree, non-EU students considerably outnumbered EU students in both full-time and part-time categories. Other undergraduate was the other level of study which part-time students outnumbered full-time students for both categories. The total number of EU students was less than half the number of non-EU students for all levels of study. The table gives numbers for the international students who studied in higher education in the UK during academic year 2010-2011, according to whether or not they came from the European Community, the type of study undertaken and whether they studied full-time or part-time. For postgraduate students as a whole, the number of non-EU students was always greater than the number of EU students. For those doing postgraduate research, there were more than twice as many non-EU students compared to EU students, 29,010 and 13,405 respectively, while for those who were taught at postgraduate level, there were more than 4 times as many non-EU students than EU students. At postgraduate level, the number of full-time students exceeded the number of part-time students for non-EU and EU students, except for other postgraduates. Similarly, there were approximately 1.5 times more non-EU students studying for a first degree, 114,670 compared to EU students, 69,770. Once again, full-time students dwarfed the number of part-time students for both non-EU and EU. The other undergraduate category was the only level of study where part-timers outnumbered full-time students, both non-EU and EU, although the former were twice as numerous as the latter. Overall, non-EU students were far greater in number than EU students, both full-time and part-time. The total number of EU students at 130,115 was less than half the total number of non-EU students at 298,110. That concludes the tutorial. If you want more help with your IELTS, go to www.myenglishexam.com.